Every piece of software we build rests on a handful of really important decisions. These choices, they shape everything, the structure, the performance, the limits, for years, sometimes even for the entire life of the application. But what happens when the reasons behind those choices get lost, when future teams are left just guessing at why things were built the way they were? Let's dive into why this is such a huge and often ignored problem in our field.
Just imagine this for a second. You're new on a team, or maybe you're digging into a part of the codebase you haven't seen in a while. You spot a pretty major design choice, and you ask what feels like a totally reasonable question, a question that should have a simple answer.
And you get crickets, total silence. The context is just gone. The people who made the call have moved on, and now you're stuck, staring at this piece of architecture with absolutely no idea what the original intent was. And look, this isn't just a little frustrating. It's genuinely risky. It leads to wasted time, endless debates, and making changes that could accidentally tear down the very foundation of the system.
So this problem of lost context is so common, so pervasive, that we can actually identify some clear anti-patterns. These are behaviors that seem okay at the time, but almost always lead to chaos later on. Let's break down 3 of the biggest traps teams fall into.
First up, we've got the Groundhog Day anti-pattern. Does this sound familiar? A decision gets made. Let's say you pick a specific database. 6 months go by. A new person joins the team and they ask, "Hey, why are we using this?" And because there's nothing written down, the entire debate kicks off all over again. It absolutely sucks the life out of a team and grinds progress to a halt, trapping you in the past instead of letting you build the future.
Then you've got email-driven architecture. This is where the justification technically exists. It's just buried somewhere in an ancient email thread or a long-archived Slack channel. The knowledge is so fragmented, it's basically lost. It forces engineers to go on this digital scavenger hunt with no map, and frankly, who has time for that? You end up making new decisions based on incomplete, half-remembered information.
And finally, there's the covering your assets anti-pattern. You probably know this one as the classic ivory tower architect problem. A big decision is just handed down from on high with zero context or reasoning. This isn't just bad communication, it completely erodes trust. It shuts down collaboration and kills any sense of team buy-in, turning a smart choice into a rigid command that nobody feels connected to. Okay, so if not documenting decisions is so bad, does that mean we need to document every little thing? No way. Absolutely not. That would just create a bureaucratic nightmare and slow everybody down. The real trick is to focus our energy only on the decisions that really matter, what we call architecturally significant decisions.
So a really smart architect named Michael Nygaard gave us a fantastic way to filter this. We only need to formally document decisions that are architecturally significant. And this is such a powerful idea because it helps us separate those huge foundational choices with long-term consequences from the small, easily reversible implementation details. But how do you know which is which?
Well, Nygaard gives us this awesome 5-point checklist. You know a decision is a big deal if it affects, number 1, the fundamental structure, like choosing microservices over a monolith. 2, a critical non-functional characteristic, one of the illities, like needing sub-200 millisecond response times. 3, a major dependency, like locking yourself into a specific cloud provider's database. 4, a public interface, like deciding your API will be REST versus GraphQL. Or 5, a core construction technique, like saying we're a React shop for all front ends. If your decision checks any of those boxes, it's definitely worth writing down. All right, so now we know what we need to document. The big question is how? And the solution isn't some huge, complex, expensive software. In fact, it's about as simple as it gets. It's just a text file. Meet the Architecture Decision Record, or ADR for short. Really, at its heart, an ADR is just a short, plain text file, usually written in Markdown. It captures one and only one architectural decision. The real magic here is that it's super lightweight, it lives right there with your code under version control, and it is unbelievably powerful.
A good ADR really has 3 main parts. It always kicks off with the context. This is all about setting the stage. What's the problem we're actually trying to solve here? What are the business pressures or technical constraints? What were the different options we looked at? This gives anyone, whether they're reading it today or 5 years from now, a perfect snapshot of the situation.
Next up is the decision itself. And this part is crucial. You have to be completely unambiguous. You state the choice in a clear, strong voice. You don't say, "We're thinking about using." No. You say, "We will use asynchronous messaging for order processing." There can't be any room for doubt. This is what we decided. Period.
And this right here, This gets to the absolute soul of what an ADR is all about. See, any developer can eventually read the code and figure out how something works. But the code almost never tells you why it was built that way. And that why, that's the most valuable piece of architectural knowledge you have. And it's always the first thing to get lost over time.
Finally, and you could argue this is the most important part, we have the consequences. Look, every significant architectural decision is a trade-off. There's no perfect answer. This section forces you to be upfront and honest about that. For instance, by choosing asynchronous messaging, we get a massive boost in resilience, but we are accepting that our end-to-end testing is going to get a lot more complicated. This shows true engineering maturity, making and articulating conscious trade-offs. Now, when you start using ADRs consistently, something pretty amazing starts to happen. All that fog of confusion and the chaos of lost history, it just starts to burn away. And what's left is this incredible clarity and a real sense of shared understanding across the team.
And this table just lays it out perfectly. That awful Groundhog Day cycle of endless debates, it's replaced by a permanent, searchable record. That chaotic, email-driven mess, now you have a central source of truth checked right into your repo. And the Ivory Tower architect, their decisions are now totally transparent and justified, and they become these amazing learning tools for the whole team, building a culture of trust.
So pretty soon, that folder of ADRs in your project becomes way more than just a simple log file. It becomes the living story of your architecture's evolution. It's a history of the tough problems you solved and the smart choices you made. Honestly, it's the best onboarding tool you could ever give a new developer and the most reliable guide for the future architects who are going to build on your work.
All right, so let's boil this all down. What are the key things to walk away with? First, learn to spot those anti-patterns. Groundhog Day, email-driven architecture, and covering your assets. Second, filter your energy. Focus only on the decisions that are truly architecturally significant. Third, use that simple, powerful ADR format to capture the context, the decision, and the consequences. And most of all, never, ever forget that the why is the most important thing you can possibly save.
And that brings me to one last question for you. Think about the project you're on right now. What's that one critical decision, the one that everyone just sort of knows, that has never, ever been written down? Maybe today is the perfect day to sit down and write your team's very first ADR.